Hey everyone, welcome back. What you just saw me do in those clips was perform an edge retention and a geometry test on one of my axes. Now this test is one of the most simple but yet most effective tests that you can perform on an axe or a knife, for example. And in this video I want to focus on discussing why this test is a good test, and then also talking about why some of the other tests and statistics that we see today on knives and axes is a little bit misleading. So when I go out into the woods and I go to test an axe, I use the axe for what the axe is designed to do. It makes the most sense, right? But unfortunately, when I'm advertising an axe on my website, I can't put that data in a statistic that everyone can easily understand. You know, I can't say that this axe chopped this species of tree that grew at this elevation, that was this old, that's been drying for this long, and it chopped it this many times. You know, unfortunately I can't measure that in a way that is easy for people to understand. And the tree that I was chopping on is one of the hardest trees that I can get my hands on in the Appalachian Mountains, which is a black locust. It was dead standing, dried black locust, a very hard wood. In today's kind of standards for advertising and marketing bladed tools such as axes and knives, we get hung up on statistics like Rockwell hardness, and then also crazy performance videos that you see, such as knives or tools cutting through objects that they aren't meant to be cutting through. So I'll start with cutting objects that knives and axes aren't meant to cut. For example, you see a video online of a man cutting a steel rod with a knife, and he cuts through the steel rod or whatever it may be, and the knife edge is untouched. It looks great. And myself and a lot of other makers have problems with videos like these because it doesn't accurately display the function of the knife. And these types of demonstrations and displays are great, dramatic, attention grabber videos. And to the people who aren't as educated on steel selection, heat treatment, and edge geometry, these videos lead you to believe that that product is the best of that product because it cut through a steel rod. And that's mind-blowing, right? And while the test is impressive, it doesn't display what the knife is meant to be used for. Like, are you buying this knife to cut steel rods? If you are, that's really weird. Most of you are not going to be buying a knife to cut through steel rods with. You're going to be buying, let's change this to axes. So you're not going to be buying an axe to be cutting through a steel rod, right? You're going to be buying an axe to fell, buck, limb, and split trees, or carve with it. A carving axe like this. You're going to be using it to carve wood. Now, there are some axes out there, like my fireman's axe, which is a search and rescue fireman's truck axe, that is designed to cut metal. This is a different exception. But if we're talking about your standard hunting knife or hunting axe or camping axe, and you see it cutting through something that it shouldn't be cutting through, that means that they have made that tool to cut through a metal rod. Will that same tool be good at cutting wood? I can guarantee you that it is not. You know, an axe or a knife that cuts through a steel rod is not going to cut through wood really well. And it all comes down to the geometry of the tool, which is a big speaking point in this video, is the importance of geometry on a knife or an axe. I want everyone to understand that the geometry of an edge is just as important, if not more important, than the heat treatment and the steel selection. The geometry of a tool is paramount to nearly everything else. Depending on what angle I grind this axe at dictates how well the axe works. It dictates what hardness of material I can cut through. For example, my fireman's axe or my truck axe can cut through metal car hoods. It can cut out a glass windshield. It'll cut nails in half. It'll cut anything on a car that you need to cut out to save someone. Now, the steel on my fireman's axe is the same exact steel on my camp axe. It's the same exact handle material. It's the same exact weight. It's the same exact heat treatment. What's the only thing that's different on that axe that separates it from being a metal cutting axe from a wood cutting axe? It's going to be the geometry of the cutting edge. I grind it slightly different, ever so slightly different. If you looked at the edge like this, of comparing a camp axe and a fireman's axe, unless you really know what you're doing, you may not even see the difference. It's that subtle. But that small difference of changing the angle of the grind on the axe separates it from being able to cut through metal and to fell a tree. And you can take a fireman's axe and try to cut a tree, but it's not going to work very well. It's going to take a lot of effort. And so if you took a camp axe and tried to cut through a metal car hood, you're going to be destroying your camp axe. So the point that I'm trying to get to is that if you see a tool cutting through a metal rod, and that tool is not generally used to cut through a metal rod, and it does cut through the metal rod, it's not going to work for its primary task. And so we want to design a tool that works well for its primary task. And when I go to test tools, I test them doing what they're meant to do. So maybe I can put this into better perspective by comparing the advertisement of knives and axes to something that's more of an everyday item that more people are aware of. So we can use vehicles as an example. So you see a tractor advertised on television. Are you going to buy that tractor because it is impressive with all these tasks, but then expect it to go on the interstate and cruise the country or something? No, you're not going to be going on the interstate with a tractor. You might be going on your local roads with a tractor. You might be doing, you're going to be doing farm work. It's meant for farm work. It's not meant to go on the interstate. So you're advertising a tractor to go down the highway at 90 miles an hour. So the second part of this discussion is going to be focused on the usage of Rockwell hardness, HRC. How important is it? What does it actually mean? And how heavily should we use that term to describe a blade and how good that blade is? Rockwell hardness is a test that puts an indentation into steel, and then that depth of the indentation is measured, and then that is put into Rockwell hardness points. The shallower the depth, the harder the material is. And the Rockwell hardness system has been used in advertising because it's an easy to measure statistic across all metal items, and it's easy for people to understand. So we have all of these Rockwell numbers being thrown around, and a lot of time the Rockwell point is the major, if not the only, determining factor that customers are using to tell the difference between product A and product B. And if it has a higher Rockwell, then it's better than the lower Rockwell item. And that's definitely not the case. As a maker, when we make something, we have to encompass a full range of different variances that go into making a tool, only one of which is Rockwell. Like I was saying earlier, the steel selection and the geometry is just as important, if not more important, than the hardness or heat treatment of the tool. Pure hardness means brittleness, and some steels can be harder without being as brittle than others. There's so many factors that go into this. So purely relying on the Rockwell system to determine how good a tool is also bogus. With an axe like this, I am in the Rockwell range of the mid-50s. And for a knife, if you saw a knife with Rockwell of mid-50s, you're going to think that it's no good. And so you have to take into account that what is that knife or axe used for? Does it need to be 60 Rockwell? If it's 60 Rockwell, will that even be better for an axe? An axe is taking a whole lot of abuse and shock. If that blade is too hard, then that means it's brittle, and do we want a brittle axe? Beyond the hardness of the tool as well, there are other alloying elements in steel that change the way that steel performs, like chromium, molybdenum, vanadium, tungsten, manganese, and more beyond that. All of these elements affect the way that steel performs in terms of corrosion resistance, through hardening ability, springiness, wear resistance. So you have to take all these things into consideration, but from a customer standpoint, you don't have the time to research what all of those elements do to a steel, right? And that's why Rockwell is so heavily relied on. So as a consumer, just be aware that there's more that goes into play other than pure Rockwell. And ask the person that you're about to buy this expensive knife or expensive axe from questions about why you selected this alloy. I see this alloy has vanadium in it. Why did you choose that? What does vanadium do? This axe or this knife has a lower Rockwell than this knife. Why is that? What's the performance difference going to be? Maybe that knife has another element in it that that helps the knife perform where it doesn't need that extra Rockwell hardness. Or why did this carving axe is ground at 30 degrees. Why did you grind that carving axe at 30 degrees? It makes a difference. 5 degree or 2.5 degree difference is going to change the performance of the tool. So know these different things. It's like if you're looking at sports cars, right? And this sports car has a huge amount of horsepower. But is horsepower the only thing that matters when going into a sports car? Most of you know that there's going to be other things that go into it, like the suspension, the brakes, the weight, the aerodynamics of the vehicle. All of those things are going to come into play to affect the performance of the overall product. And the same thing goes with knives and axes. Now, after having all of that been said, it's important to understand that there's a reversal to everything. There's a reversal to every theory. Everything in life has a reversal. There are positive aspects of performing abusive tasks to a blade or a tool, but only if that abusive task doesn't compromise the tool's ability to perform its main function. So, for example, if I have a knife here and I'm about to cut a brass rod with it, did I have to alter that knife just so it can pass the brass rod test? So I want to have a knife that is first and foremost designed to do what it's supposed to do. We'll say cutting wood, skinning a deer, and then also be able to cut the brass rod. We don't want to alter the product just so it can perform this test for marketing reasons. When it comes down to Rockwell points, a high HRC is often beneficial to the tool. I'm not trying to say that a low Rockwell is always better. For the most part, a high Rockwell is better. But we don't want to get hung up on one measurement. And this has just been a discussion that has been talked about with my other bladesmith friends, blacksmith friends, knife maker friends, and that is not as much talked about to the consumer public. And so I wanted to just briefly discuss the importance of geometry, and that there is a whole array of different things that goes into making a tool perform and function other than just a few simple statistics. I hope that you found this video educational, and now as a consumer you can go out and talk to the maker and educate yourself even further about why this product is made like this, why is it going to work better than this person's product, etc. And I will briefly show off the new carving axe that's coming out. Now, I'm going to make a dedicated video to this axe when it is ready for release. We're still probably a couple weeks away from making this release public, so please don't ask me if this is for sale yet, because it's not. This is just a prototype. This is a carving axe design that has been in the works between myself and Maximilian from Woodsman's Finest for 7 or 8 months now. Maximilian designed this axe, and then I, of course, have put it into production. It's going to be available on my website. I will let you all know when that time comes. So Maximilian is a fantastic master. I suppose you could call him a master woodcarver. I'm not sure. He's very young, but he's very good. And this is his design that he's had in his head for a long time. And he needed someone to produce it at a high quality. The overall length is 13 inches. Overall weight is around 750 grams. Head weight around 550 grams. So I'll just show it off real quick. I'm not going to talk any more about it than what I just have. But just be on the lookout for this little guy. Anyways, catch you guys later.